and the roof needs to be done. But as far as the refrigeration plant down in that room, it would be good for the rest of my life anyway. So, we got a decent Zamboni now, and it should hold out for a while now. I don't hope does that clear things up a little bit there?
Yes, thank you. To know we deal with refrigeration in our business, and it's very challenging dealing with old compressors. We have the same problems, but your compressors are older than I am. So I do understand the challenges with that, but
they still work well. But like Ian was saying, that they do have the new improved compressors out there. And while we're chopping all this stuff out, it does make sense to do it all in one shot. Because it will be probably 3 times the cost if we weld everything up, and then a few years down the road we have to chop it all out and then replace the compressors then too.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. Just a quick question through to Ian, and maybe Mike can elaborate on this, but we talk about gas savings, electricity savings by doing this project, but we're not talking about health and safety. And I don't think it was that many years ago in the Kootenay, someone lost her life, I believe, to an ammonia leak. So, I mean, there is those, if we let this go and go and go, there's risk to our staff.
So, yeah, our chillers are 18 years old. Their end of life is 19 to 20 years old. Asuius's chiller was 16 years old. They went to fire up this year, and it failed on them. So they had ammonia issues, and then they were doing an emergency fix on it, and just to get them through to the season, and then they have to do a complete chiller replacement, and they didn't have anything budgeted for that. So it kind of caught them off guard, and I just didn't want to be in the same situation where we go to fire up or we have an issue that we're scrambling for. I've been kind of telling Dave over quite a few years that this would be coming down the pipe, and unfortunately the prices have just been going up and up and up, and I feel bad for it, but Dave kind of was saying that it's kind of the way of most of the projects have been coming in now. And then there was also another couple issues around the province too that we just got to stay on top of this equipment. So
I can expand on that too. Yeah, and you're completely correct that life safety, health and safety is very important to all these projects, because ammonia is a toxic gas. So it's very important that we treat it with respect. And I actually talking about Fernie, and there was 3 deaths in Fernie. I actually gave a series of talks around BC about why it happened, what were the outcomes of it. And it actually was a chiller that failed. So a very similar situation as this, where a replacement was put off for a few years and there was a failure in the chiller. So it definitely is increased risk as the project gets deferred for life and safety. One thing we're definitely doing in this to go in the right direction though, is we're replacing the current shell and tube chillers. And I think I have a picture of it right back here. These shell and tube chillers, we're replacing what's called with plate and frame chillers, or the proposed replacement are plate and frame, I should say. And those chillers have about 15% of the ammonia that's contained in these shell and tubes. So we're drastically reducing the ammonia risk in this plant as part of this upgrade, because we're reducing the ammonia charge of the entire refrigeration plant by probably about 60 to 70% when we propose for this project. So not only are we doing it because the chillers are at end of life, but everything we're doing here aligns where life and safety we understand is paramount, and we're thinking about that as part of the design process. So that's a great question and something that we're very aware of and have thought a lot about as part of this process. But thank you for the question.
Okay, Councillor Betts.
Okay, so I'm just trying to think strategically about how this can be accomplished without just jumping into our budget, which is a major challenge. So earlier in the day, we talked about how other communities, I think it was Surrey, with their aquatic center, how they're purchasing equipment, putting it to the side in preparation for what they're moving forward with. Is there an opportunity to purchase the equipment that's necessary, but with intention of doing installation at a later time so that we're working towards it without it all falling into one budget, like into one budget year? Is that it? Anyway, I'm just trying to look for opportunities here to spread this cost out and to save and budget towards another major project. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, the recommendation comes from gas tax funds, so it basically just means we wouldn't be able to use those gas tax funds this year for something else like roads. I mean, that's kind of the decision I think we're making now, but I'll turn it over to staff if they want to elaborate.
And thank you for the question. And you're correct, Mr. Mayor. If the funding source is through community gas tax, that would have to be spent next year. Our RFP that we've issued for the bidding prices does include installation, so we would have to go back with another RFP process to break it out of purchasing the equipment first and then installation later. Costs may go up for projecting installation at a later date. I can't predict that, but right now the pricing that we have is everything in as far as labor and installation and engineering.
Councillor Van Elfen?
I'll bring the resolution forward, Mr. Mayor.
Could we just get that up on the screen? It's second.
Do you want me to read it out, sir?
That's all right.
Okay.
Any discussion on the motion? That's to approve the 950,000 as an early budget approval. Councillor Patton?
Thank you, Your Worship. So, Lori, we had the chillers for replacement this year, but to do the chillers, you also have to change the headers. So, and then our compressors are 40 years old, so they're ready to give up their life also. So the real only thing on what you've brought forward today is the preheat for the ammonia for the domestic water system, where you take the gas and preheats the water. Okay, so, but what we're looking at is you're telling us that the chillers, the compressors, and the headers require replacement the spring of 2023. Is that correct? Okay, thank you.
And just to clarify, we already had 500,000 in the 5-year plan for this year. So really it's 450,000 that's above and beyond which we had anticipated for next year. Councillor Peak?
I think the timing is right. I think the risk factor and the fact that we're going to do the work, we will have done part of the work anyway, that not to be redundant and needing to do it, putting off part of it and doing it in 5 years. I think that we should be doing it now. And the gas tech funding, if it has to be spent by 2023, it just fits in neatly for the opportunity to complete the whole project.
Councillor Van Elfen?
Thank you. And if I'm not mistaken, as Polar's presentation outlined, that these rebates from Fortis is on the entire project. So if we only pick parts and pieces out, we're only going to get parts and pieces of rebates. So this way, it's a one-shot deal. We do the entire project and we grab our rebates when we can, and the project is done and is safe. Thank you.
Okay, if no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Okay, item 7.6. So I'd like to propose that we split this item into 2 separate discussions, and that we first deal with the first part, the fees and charges amendment bylaw, and then that we do the utilities afterwards. Is everybody okay with that? Yeah. Okay, so corporate officer, are you taking this?
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. So just to note that the fees and charges bylaw does include utilities in it as well, just when you are making the recommendation. But I'll speak to the FOI part first, and Brad will speak to the dog licensing second, and then we'll pass it over to Dave to speak to the utilities as a whole. So to begin with the freedom of information of the portion of the fees and charges amendment, on November 26, 2021, the province of BC made amendments to the Freedom of Information and Protection of Privacy Act and the Freedom of Information Protection of Privacy Regulation. As part of these updates, a $10 non-refundable application processing fee was introduced for the first time for the Freedom of Information request. Local governments are not required to implement the application fee, but if they choose to, they may not charge more than the prescribed amount in the provincial regulation, which is the $10. If implemented, this fee must be paid before any request will be processed. The district's current fees for Freedom of Information requests are specified in the Fees and Charges Bylaw number 98-001, which points to the fee schedule within the provincial regulations that is now out of date. The proposed amendment will update the reference to the new regulation number with the correct updated fees, which also includes the new application processing fee of $10. And I'll now pass it over to Brad unless there's any questions to speak to the dog licensing fees.
Don't see any.
Okay, with regards to the dog license fees, we, in an effort to kind of remain consistent with our surrounding communities in the Okanagan region, as well as follow a user pay model for district services, we've looked at other communities, and there's a benchmark comparison chart here in Council's report as to what other communities are charging for the dog license fees and what we're currently paying. And right now we're currently paying $40 for unspayed and neutered, and $20 for spayed and neuter for annual dog tag fee. Just some other examples, the Regional District of Central Okanagan, they manage all of the Central Okanagan communities, including Kelowna, Peachland, and all of the Lake Country as well. All of the municipalities are within their area, and they charge $60 and then $20. And City of Penticton charges $65 for unspayed and neutered, and $32.50 for spayed neutered. So we are recommending that an increase to the district's dog license fees from $40 to $60 for unspayed and neutered, and from $20 to $30 for spayed neutered. As well, we're recommending a $10 late fee, which is consistent with what we currently do, except just spelling it out as a $10 increase. So that way, if this rate does change in the future, it would be a consistent $10 late fee added to the dog tag. And we've projected that this change will increase the annual dog license revenue from about $22,000 per year to about $35,000 per year, which will help with our budgeting process in 2023. I'm happy to take any questions on this one.
Thank you. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. Brad, is this fee increase have much to do, our dog control service, if I'm not mistaken, is the same contractor that contracts through the City of Penticton, am I correct? Does this increase have anything to do with fee increases coming from the dog control company or the lady that actually does that service for us? Thank you.
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Patton, I would say it's unrelated right now. There has been no recent fee increases to the dog control contract. This contract was renewed last year, not in 2022, but in 2021 for an additional 3 years. The rates that we are currently providing to animal control contractor are consistent with what we paid in 2021 as an example, with I think some inflationary increases on a year-to-year basis. we could review that contract when it's up for renewal in another year and a half, roughly, or two. I think it will be up for renewal, but right now it's not related to any fee increases.
Has our cost of our dog tags gone up considerably in regards to the $10 increase? Or I'm having a hard time in my head coming up with why another $10 over. I'm talking about a spayed and neutered dog or at $20 to $30. Like what has instigated a $10 rise in the pet license that would constitute that type of? Thank you.
Through your worship to Councillor Patton, I don't think there was anything in particular with regards to a cost perspective that resulted in us reviewing this. We tried to be consistent with our surrounding region on all of our fees, not just dog license fees, but business licenses and planning applications as well. Right now, even with the change, we're not getting close to cost recovery for this service. So it's basically a question of council. Do you want to have the users that are paying for or that are having dogs paying for dog control more or the general taxpayer? And that's kind of the question we're asking you to make right now with this change.
Yeah, I note it only covers 50% of the cost. That's with the new fee. So that means people who don't own pets are subsidizing the dog owners for the rest. Councillor Traynor. Okay, Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. Guide service or RCMP dogs where certification is provided. Is a livestock guardian dog class as a service dog? I'm just asking the question.
No, I don't think so.
A lot of farmers have guardian dogs to protect their livestock. So are they exempt, or are we charging for those too? Or
no, they are charged as well if they come in for a license.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, through the mayor. I'm just wondering, Brad, if you have the cost for us, or Dave, thank you. If you have the cost, what was the cost of the Dale Meadows fenced dog park amenities in 2022? So the cost of fencing, the porta toilet, the signage, garbage removal, do we have a cost on that we're all paying?
Through your worship to Councillor Betts. So Lori Mullen here, Director of Community Services, is going to try to answer that or dig that cost for you, but we don't have it at our fingertips right now at the moment.
Thank you. Just as a general follow-up, that would be, for me, just an indication of a user pay model in terms of recovering some cost of the amenities that we are providing to the dog owning families here in Summerland. So, and that's a valuable resource that we've heard they want. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any further on the dogs? CAO.
Well, Lori's looking. I'm going to say just what I recall is something in the neighborhood of $25,000 to set that up. Then there was some improvements in a porta potty and some signage, and then there's fencing that had to go up. That is going up to protect people from softballs and whatnot. I think that's pushing it into the $40,000 mark, but I'm just going off complete memory here, so we'll see if Lori comes up with something. Yeah, she'll take a minute. Anyway, back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, should we take that under advisement then and move on? Yeah. Yeah, that sounds right to me. Yeah. Okay, should we move on to the utility fee changes now? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just wait for the presentation to load. I guess as it's loading, I can start the preamble. So over the past few months, staff have been working on the 2023 water, sewer, and electric budgets. Council reviewed and deliberated the proposed budgets on November 22nd and 23rd, and directed staff to present the proposed budgets, policy changes, and rate increases at the December 5th, 2022 virtual public open house. District budgets have been significantly impacted by skyrocketing costs, and in order to balance budgets, which is legally required, Council was provided with various scenarios on how to achieve this balance in these challenging times. Further, in this presentation, I will revisit the three main options that were discussed. At the conclusion of Council's budget deliberations, a key policy change that was supported was to eliminate the 10% early payment discount. This program is estimated to cost the district $1.96 million in 2022. Over the past 2 weeks, the district has been busy messaging this policy change to residents. This messaging began at the virtual public open house on December 5th. Following that, the mayor put forward a budget briefing summary in the Summerland review, and mailouts were sent out with the November utility invoices notifying residents of the proposed changes. So a lot of work has been done over these past few weeks getting the messaging out. The next few slides will just briefly highlight each of the three utility budgets. Now, before delving into the three budget summaries, I just want to reiterate that each budget summary shown in this presentation takes into account the removal of the 10% early payment discount. So with that being said, in the sewer utility, our proposed operating budget for 2023 is $3.38 million. Council has earmarked an additional $52,308 as an asset management reserve contribution. And the proposed 2023 capital plan is $860,000, and it includes 6 projects. The proposed water operating budget for 2023 is $7.13 million, which generates a small surplus of $982. Now, the water utility has been hit hard with soaring chemical and chlorine costs, which we need in order to treat drinking water. These costs have increased 142% over 2022 and account for $490,000 of the overall budget increase. To put this into context, a 1% rate increase in the water utility generates $47,700. So to cover off this increase in chemicals alone, we'd be looking at a 10.3% rate increase. An additional cost driver in the water utility was the addition of $218,500 of new debt for the water utility's portion of Giants Head Road reconstruction. The project was approved by Summerland residents through an alternative approval process and will cost the typical homeowner approximately $42.21 annually. Had council chosen to keep the 10% discount and cover these increased costs through a rate increase, an increase of 17.13% would have been required. No additional asset management reserve contributions are proposed in 2023, and the 2023 capital plan is $3.8 million, and it includes 11 projects.
Just for clarification, when you say an increase of 17%, that's just within the water budget,
That is correct.
right? Okay, I just wanted clarification if people are watching this, because I think people think of their utility bill as a whole. So I just wanted to make sure that when we talk about increases, we're talking about sewer, water, electricity. So
Correct.
17% in just water then.
That is correct.
Okay,
Councillor.
thank you.
And there is a slide further on that will outlay each of the individual increases had council done that.
Okay, thank you.
The proposed electric operating budget is $15.26 million. And like the water utility, the electrical utility has been hit hard with increased costs. Wholesale power costs have increased by $750,000, and in total is the single largest expense in the district's entire budget. Eliminating the 10% discount allows for a $608,791 asset management contribution. And the proposed 2023 capital plan is $3.83 million, and that includes 8 projects. So before we delve into the details of this slide, a key thing to note is that the next 3 slides show the effect on a typical home in which the customer was utilizing the 10% discount. And that's a key theme in these next 3 slides is utilization of the discount. So when we look at option 1 that was presented to council in November, the option included the elimination of the 10% early payment discount And it also included asset management contributions of 5% for water and 3.5% for sewer. So as the slide notes, the overall increase to your typical homeowner or account holder from this scenario would have been $409.53 annually, or $34.13 per month. Now, the effective annual increase, so when we compare 2022 to 2023, for the entire year works out to 15.06%. That's the financial impact on this scenario. Option 2 that was presented and we touched on briefly earlier was keeping the 10% early payment discount, but increasing the rates to cover the operational deficits in each of the utilities. So in this instance, had council moved forward with that 10%, keeping it, we would have required a 17.13% increase in water rates, a 6.36% increase in sewer rates, and a 7.65% increase in our electrical rates. The annual increase to this homeowner would be $276.93, and the effective annual rate on that is 10.19%. Now, in a further slide, we will look at the financial impact that keeping the 10% discount and raising rates has on those individuals who consistently can't access the program due to an inability to pay. The slide will show how these people are, in essence, subsidizing those people that can utilize this program. Oops. Scenario number 3 is the proposed scenario that council has chosen to move forward with, and that was the elimination of the 10% early payment discount and increasing water rates by 4.86% to cover off the new debt from Giants Head Road. Again, well, so there has been a lot of misinformation posted on social media, wherein the comments are saying that the district is not only eliminating the 10% discount, but is also increasing utility rates by 13%, thereby having an overall financial impact of 23% to a resident. And now this simply is not correct. As this slide shows, the effective annual rate increase, which includes the 10% elimination, is 12.99%, not 23%. Much has also been said about today's financial climate and the struggles that people are having with escalating costs. The district has seen people's utilization of the 10% discount drop from 96% in 2019 to 93% in 2022. This slide provides a summary of the previous 3 scenarios, but instead of a typical resident that can utilize the 10% discount, this slide shows the financial impact on a person who was unable to utilize the discount in 2022. Now, it is important to note that the 2023 calculated amounts for number 1 and number 3 include the 2% penalty. So the 2% penalty has been incorporated into these calculations. So for scenario 1, again, with the elimination of the 10% discount and including the asset management contributions of 5% for water and 3.5% for sewer, we see that the annual financial impact on someone that wasn't able to utilize the discount is $170.04, as opposed to $409.53 for someone that was able to utilize it. Number 2, by keeping the discount and increasing the rates, we see that the annual increase is $307.72 for a person unable to utilize the discount, where comparatively speaking, it's $276.93 for those individuals that can. And I go back to my further comments. This is where, in essence, the people that are unable to claim the discount or utilize it are actually subsidizing those that can. And the third and final scenario is, again, the one that's being proposed by council, where we're eliminating the 10% discount and increasing the water rates by 4.86%. We can see that the financial impact on an individual not being able to utilize the discount is $112.68 annually, compared to $353.16 for those that can. So, Mr. Mayor, that concludes my comments in terms of the utility rates. There are the resolutions on screen that would, should council choose, will put this into effect. And I can answer any questions that you may have.
Okay, thank you. So before we go to questions, as we've all received a lot of correspondence in the last week from a lot of people with lots of different viewpoints, and I think the message, though, we're hearing is that removing the 10% discount is too much too soon. And I certainly understand people currently are under a lot of financial pressure these days. I think we should keep in mind that the province is providing everybody $100 to all the electricity, to come off all the electricity bills, and that's going to be applied to Summerland as well. So when we take into consideration the average $350 increase per year that are proposing, really it should be considered $250, because the province is providing that money based on the understanding that electricity costs are increasing, and that's across the province. So if we think in terms of the increase is $250 on average per year, that's still too much for many people. So we've been discussing with a lot of councillors and with our CIO over the past week, and one of what more can we do while not biting the nose off to spite our face without undermining our own utilities. And one of the ideas that came back a few times is, what if we matched the province's $100 with our own contributions? When you look at the impact of removing the 10% discount, it basically just covers the cost in the water and the sewer. There's nothing really left over, but there is a surplus in the electricity. That money should be going to reserves, because we're far behind in our reserves in our electricity utility. But if we were to match $100, we could take it from that utility surplus. Perhaps the finance director can explain to us a little bit about how that might work, but I think there's an understanding that could. Now, I know with these one-time kind of government payoffs kind of seem like a populist move at the time, but there is a reason for it. It's to help people out in a difficult time, and I think we're in a difficult time right now. But at the same time, it's not the same as a rate decrease, because in the long run, we need that money. We have a lot of capital investments in the future that we're going to have to address. And if we don't start building up our reserves in the electricity utility, we'll never be able to do something like voltage conversion, which is a $30 million project. That's the reality. So anyways, I just want to put that idea that has been floated around of having another $100 rebate, which we could, because we have to put the process in place to process the provincial $100, we could just piggyback on that program and do it at the same time. So anyway, I put it out there for discussion, and if anybody wanted to act on it, I would, let's talk about it. Councillor Peak, and then Councillor Traynor.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, there has been a lot of discussion behind the scenes and with the public over the last week. We are lucky enough to hold our own utilities almost as a business. And we do bonus ourselves with that money, $500,000 each year, to sort of subsidize what we have to spend. This utility is actually owned by the people. We govern it because we're council. I think in this instance, the opportunity to take what we would normally put to surplus and give it back to our public in $100 credit is a very good way to look at the opportunity that somebody who doesn't have a utility could even do. And I think that that would help our residents with the inflationary matters and the costs of things in general. And that is something that we should do. I think it has an advantage. I think that people can understand that although we might want to take this money and put it in our reserves so we could spend it to keep our utility going with all the costs that are going on, and we continue, it's like the homeowner, we have to look after what we have. But in this year, because there are a lot of expenses for all of us, I think that we could take that $100 and give it back to our residents. And as you say, Your Worship, the fact is will be already doing this operational kind of thing for the provincial $100 in that rebate program. So it wouldn't be a particularly difficult operational matter, is my understanding as well. I think we should be doing this.
Thank you. Councillor Traynor?
Dave, I was wondering if you could explain how come we have a surplus of $608,000 in the electrical utility if we have to have balanced budgets? How do we end up with that? That's my first question. I have another question after.
Through the mayor. I gotta go back.
The reason I'm asking is because over the last couple of days, I've been asked a lot how our rates compare to Fortis and BC Hydro. And I just want to know kind of how we generate that kind of surplus.
So through the mayor, when the first budget was brought to council in November, we actually didn't have a surplus. We had a deficit of over, I think it was $900,000. And the driving force behind that was the discount. So the discount in the electrical utility for 2023 was budgeted at $1.6 million. So by removing the discount, it increased our revenues by $1.6 million. So which then eliminated the operational deficit of $990,000 that we had. So it generated that additional surplus, if you'd like to call it that, which council earmarked to be put into reserves.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. And so if we were to do $100 back to all utility users, of that 608, how much would that cost us?
Based on the information that we've received from Fortis and just looking at our own internal calculations, it would cost us $550,000 if we provided it to residential customers only.
So if we were to do that, then all utility users would be getting a total credit this year of $200. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Patton?
My question was answered, Your Worship.
Councillor Van Elfen?
Thank you. So through to our Director of Finance, do industrial commercial users getting the rebate from Fortis of the $100?
Through the mayor, they're not getting $100. They get a prorated amount based on historical kilowatt hours used. So it's not specific. it's not specific to $100 or $200. There's calculations that are involved that we still have to go through.
I think it'd be difficult for us to give, to include business customers as well. I don't think we just have enough left to do it, but residential, we probably could. Councillor Barkwell.
First of all, I'd like to thank Dave for his clear explanation of how eliminating the deficit is actually a progressive move and helps those who are least able to pay. Now, a lot of us kind of understood that intuitively, others didn't. He laid it out in facts and figures and numbers and showed that it does help those who need it the most that way. And then I guess a point of view on the proposed rebate, I like it. I think that always wanting to, as an accountant, we're pretty prudent with conservative with our money, but I do see that a $608,000 surplus, in addition to the 625,000 round numbers, the regular transfer to reserves that we've initiated. Last year was a similar number. The years before it was like 400,000. So we're making progress on those reserves, and to not make as to go down to a number similar to the projected contribution. Our surpluses last year is this year now, so I'm referring, but this year we project 140,000 into the surplus. If we take $550,000 of this surplus and use it this way, I think we're still in good shape. And as is being pointed out, we're in good shape for next year too. So people don't like to compare us to Penticton, but I think we're doing a much better thing. We're not dipping in. We're not going in the hole here. We're just pausing on the contribution to the reserves for 1 year.
Thank you. Councillor Patton.
Thank you, Worship. Dave, could you just clarify for me on the $1.96 million? How did we come to that figure, to such a high figure that impacts from the 10%?
Through the mayor to Councillor Patton, the 1.96 million is the cumulative total of all three utilities. So it takes into account the 1.6 from the electrical utility, which is the largest. And then I think there was about $200,000 in the water utility and around 80 or 90,000 in the sewer utility. So it's the cumulative total.
Thank you so much. That part I missed, so thank you.
Councillor Betts.
Thank you, Your Worship. I have to admit my reluctance in administering a $100 rebate program to every household or property in Summerland, residential property. I really struggle with this because not every household needs this benefit, and the ones that are struggling need more, frankly. I'm really, really worried about our citizens who are struggling with inflationary pressure. And I feel that taking $550,000 of our surplus is a blunt tool to help some, and some who don't need help. And I will support, absolutely, if this is what council wants, but I would like to share my distrust in this as such a blunt measure. And I wish that we could do something more targeted to people who are suffering from inflationary pressure, housing costs, inflation, food, with our surplus in a more targeted way. Thank you.
So I'll just comment, it is blunt, and it is, everybody will receive it. I guess in the past week or so, what I've heard is from people is income tax is going up, unemployment insurance is going up, Bank of Canada rates are going up, your mortgage rates are going up. Meanwhile, banks are making huge profits, but I'm paying $200 a month more for my mortgage. Energy costs are going up, even though oil companies are making huge profits. Food prices are going up. Pay $5 for a head of lettuce these days, although grocery stores are making huge profits. So people are facing all these inflationary pressures, and they're saying, how dare you raise our utility rates when we're faced all these others? And it's hard for us because we probably have the least amount of fat to trim as any of these other corporations and organizations and higher levels of governments that are also hitting you. And we're all in this together. I understand we're the most accessible here, so that's why people come to us for help, but we're not the enemy. We're all affected too. We're all part of the same community. And we're all operating in the same market as everybody else as well. So that's why we have to pay these costs. So I've heard everybody, and I understand where everybody's coming from, but I haven't really heard anybody come up with any other solution of what we can do here. And so this is why we've been talking amongst ourselves. And I think this is the best solution that we can come up with for right now to help people. And I don't see anything else. And it's a blunt instrument, but it's a really widespread issue right now. And I think we should help as many people as we can. And this is a way we can do it. And we can address the more vulnerable population that we have, the homeless people we have in this community, through other means, such as supporting the food bank, but that's another discussion another time. So anyway, that's all I have to say on that. Thanks. Councillor Traynor.
So this tactic will work this year, but I'm just trying to think about how this is going to affect us next year and the following year and the following year when prices continue to go up and we maybe don't have 500,000. So I'm wondering, and I'm just throwing this out there for us to consider, just so that we can say that we've thought about all the different options and that we've looked at everything. Dave, what would be the ramifications of doing a 5% discount and just staggering it? And I'm not saying I want to do it. I just want to see what it would look like, because I just think next year we're going to be, still sitting at 10. And so just for the sake of us having the information and being able to discuss it, what kind of impact would that have? Off the top of your head, it doesn't have to be.
I'll give that to the CEO.
Sure, I'll let Dave answer with more eloquence from a financial perspective in a moment, but as we looked at all those options, anything we do less in terms of a discount has to translate into rates in order to make up the difference. And as we saw on that purple chart that was talking about, I guess we could say that sort of vulnerable population, anything we do that maintains the 10% or 5% or any discounting program imports more pressure on the vulnerable. And if I understood what the mayor was saying earlier about matching this BC government credit, what I remember about that chart, which isn't on the screen anymore, but what I remember about that chart, it was about $100 a year net financial impact to the vulnerable person. And with all of these changes, if the 10% program's eliminated, but then if these utility credits are considered up to perhaps $200, that would put them, actually that individual in a positive position for the 2023 year, that person that can't access the discounting program. The strange element of the discount program, and as Dave mentioned, that the number of people who have not been able to access it has been growing. And the strange thing about the program is one's participation in the program is determined by the ability to pay. So I personally haven't seen government program of that nature before. Typically, it's the other way around, that if you're demonstrating that you have a challenge to pay, you can access a government program. I've never seen a program that's your access to the program is determined on your ability to pay. So in this case, I think it's making a shift to perhaps more equity in that regard by the elimination of the 10% discount. But I do think Dave's now had the opportunity to look up the 5% question.
Can I
if you
just
have that
quickly add
calculation.
to what you said quickly?
Sure.
I agree with you, but I have heard from people over the last week who have said that they can pay the bill because of that 10%. So they make sure that they have enough money because they need to get that 10%. If they didn't have that 10%, then they wouldn't be able to pay the bill. So I know that so 93% of Summerlanders access the discount program. And I think of that 93, there's probably a good chunk of people that really rely on that 10%. And so that's my concern about getting rid of the 10% completely. And yes, the $100 this year is great, but I just worry about next year and the following year, because next year we're going to be back at the same position where we have, we're hit again with it. So that was just something I wanted council to think about, that a lot of people budget based on being able to save that 10%.
Further to CAO's comments, I did run some calculations, and if we look at reducing a discount to 5% and holding with no asset management contributions in any of the utilities, we would be looking at an 8.2% increase in water rates that would still be required. Sewer would be okay. We would not need any rate increases in sewer. And the electric utility would require a 1.4% rate increase. So taking all of those into account, your typical individual who accesses the discount, their overall financial impact for 2023 would be $3,082. And these are rounded. So it would work out to about $240.43 a year. Now, I have not calculated that for the individual that can't access the discount. That is going to take me a bit of time. But as we've seen with reducing the 10% to zero, there is the subsidization factor, and we would just know for a fact that that person that isn't utilizing the discount is still subsidizing those individuals that can.
Councillor Barkwell.
Yeah, thank you. I think that Councillor Trainer's example just goes to prove the CAO's point, in that this is a funny program and that only those who can afford to take advantage of it get that discount. And that, as Dave has pointed out, it's a regressive sort of a program that those who are least able to pay are paying the most with that discount. So I really do support, one way or the other, we have to raise the money, and it's probably fairer to eliminate that discount and do it that way.
And Director of Finance.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So while the discussion was going on, I quickly ran some numbers. So the proposed resolution, or the proposed rate increases in front of council right now, take into account the $353.16 annual increase. If council was to match the Fortis $100 rebate, that would take $200 off that 353. So the overall impact for a individual that could access the discount knocks down to the 153, which is, when compared to 2022, is a 5.63% financial impact. Now, if we take that one step further and we look at the vulnerable who aren't able to access that discount. Their overall increase by removing the 10% was $112.68. So now by crediting them the $200, they're actually a little bit ahead, $87 ahead of where they would have been in the previous year. So that decision does provide some financial assistance in the year.
I think we need a motion on the table if we want to proceed with this. Would anybody like to, with the $100? Councillor Barkwell.
I'll move that the District of Summerland match the Fortis $100 rebate for 2023 with $100 from our electrical fund.
All right, look, we have it up on the screen already. And the rest of it as well? That's just the
that's
first,
the
second, third
info,
reading. Yeah.
As
Okay.
it says on the screen.
Yeah. Seconder, Councillor Patton. Okay, any further discussion? Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you. The only thing, the only comment, or I heard a lot of comments, but some of the comments I heard was around the 2% penalty, where people felt that just the way the billing happens, and then all of a sudden, they're maybe have one pay period coming up, and then they, may get caught with a 2% penalty. Do we feel it's absolutely necessary? Could we go the first quarter of 2023 and see how it goes? And if we're finding that our monies aren't coming in, then implement the 2%? But do we think it's necessary right off the get-go? Or is it something that we could push out a little bit more? I don't know if that's doable. That, kind of like a net 30. You get your bill on such and such a date, you have 30 days later, or maybe to the next billing cycle to make sure your bill's paid before the penalty kicks in. Just want to throw it out on the table, see if anybody else has any further thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, some people have expressed doubt to me that the people who really need the discount are the ones who don't get it because they're not able to pay on time, and they ask, how do I know that? How do we know that? And the way we know that is because they come to us and tell us, and even just since I've been mayor, I've had a number of people come to me and say, express frustration that they live paycheck to paycheck, and that their paydays don't align with our due dates, so I certainly hear where you're coming from, Councillor Van Elfen, that those same people could end up paying a 2% penalty. So is there any way we can delay that 2% penalty a month, or if they don't pay, or I don't know what's possible from our back end technology and everything like that. But I think that's the question, really, isn't it?
I can try to answer that question. My billing clerk, unfortunately, is in Hawaii right now, so I wasn't able to ask her this question. My understanding of how our billing system works is that either the penalty and or the discount is linked to the utility due date. So we don't have the ability to have a due date of one day, but then calculate the penalty either 2 or 3 weeks later. Our system isn't sophisticated enough to do that.
Is it sophisticated enough, though, to apply the penalty to the next billing cycle?
That I don't know.
Councillor Peak.
Thank you, Worship. Do we need the 2%? Are you counting this in the budget? Then why don't we eliminate it for 6 months?
CAO.
So I think if I, through the mayor, if I understand the question correctly, is why not have the 2% for 6 months? So I think one option that could happen is to, if the bylaw changes are adopted first, second, and third reading with that in there, it's always within the discretion of council to actually determine if that provision would be applied. So it could be that council indicates to staff that we want to take 6 months to see how it goes, further to Councillor Van Alphen's point and your own, Councillor Peak. It would be in the bylaw, but we would be choosing not to implement that 2% at this time for a period of 1, 3, 6 months, whatever time. And then if it's determined that we are seeing program challenges, then we always would have the opportunity to institute that 2% at that time. If it looks like things are going well, we could always do a bylaw amendment later to remove that 2% piece. But it's something that would be within the discretion of council to direct us to hold off on implementing.
Okay, maybe just to Dave and then Councillor Barkwell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I guess further to CAO's comments, my only word of caution in not having any type of a penalty is that we have in Summerland, we have a lot of renters who, if there isn't any kind of incentive for them to pay their bills, they could be leaving their landlords with substantial bills should they leave. We have seen it. At the end of the day, the utility is linked to the property, and we have seen that. So that would be my only word of caution in not doing that.
Councillor Barkwell.
Yes, I don't really think I understand completely Councillor Van Alphen's point. The bills are still going to go out at the same time. You're still going to, for a lot of us, it'll still be taken out of your account automatically at the end of the month. For those who get it in the mail and go down to City Hall to pay it, if they're going to be late, in the old days they would pay an extra 10%. Under this regime, if they come in a day late or a week late or 3 weeks late, it's still going to be 2%. But the pattern is still there, and it's a pattern that's identical to every other bills that we receive, our credit card bills and the gas bill and the whatever else. So I don't necessarily see a change. And we had this discussion about the concern about not having a penalty already, and I think that would be a disaster. Just problems administratively, and yeah, we don't want to create headaches for staff. They have enough already.
Councillor Van Alphen.
Well, it could hinge on your next bill. If your next bill comes and you haven't paid your first bill, then the 2% would be added to your second bill. But if you've paid it, there is no 2% penalty. And further to our Director of Finance on rentals and landlords, if I'm a landlord, if I'm not mistaken, I have a right to come in and check the utilities. So you're telling, in the past, landlords were able to come in and see if their tenants paid their bills, so they weren't hung out to dry. No?
As a landlord, you can come in and ask,
right,
if the bill has been paid.
Correct.
Through privacy and all of the new legislation that's out there, we wouldn't be allowed to tell you how much it was.
Okay. Fair enough. Thank you.
Could I suggest then maybe that, well, we need a vote on the motion that's on the floor, but in terms of the 10%, could we refer that to staff and for them to come back to us and find out whether that 2% could be added to the next bill or not? Because that to me seems to be the most straightforward way. you're still penalized. I agree, there still needs to be a penalty, but the issue is being flexible and providing that, that so that we expect the customer to adhere to our schedules, and rather than, if we really want to focus on customer service, we should be more in tune to what meets their needs. And this month is a classic example. In the month of December, we bring forward our due date because it's Christmas, but doesn't mean people's employers are bringing forward their paychecks. So maybe the government is, I don't know, but so I think that's why it's just a question of customer service, and that's the way I look at it. But is that would that work? Yeah.
Yeah, I can, once my clerk's back from her Hawaiian vacation, I will definitely sit down and have a conversation with her.
So is everyone okay with that? Yeah, okay, so I'll call the question to the motion that's on the floor, the one that's on the screen. And if there's no further discussion, yeah, okay, so all in favor? Any opposed? None opposed? That carries. Okay, moving on. 7.7, subdivision and development servicing bylaw. Our Director of Works, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just prior to the presentation going up, I just wanted to basically mention this is a follow-up to the November Committee of the Whole meeting. I just want to give a brief update on the SDS history, and then a high-level presentation similar to the one that we received from Urban Systems. Just some brief history. The project itself began several years ago as a council priority, with some progress made on the document, but eventually it stalled out in part due to the pandemic. In the past year, we've reignited the project, but with a slightly different team. Thank you. As many of the staff members have since changed. Through several meetings with a variety of district department representatives and our consultants, Urban Systems, we went line by line through the entire proposed bylaw to make appropriate changes to ensure the bylaw is current and is easy to follow for both the development community as well as district staff. One of the main changes from the previous SDS bylaw is we've integrated the MMCD into the bylaw. That's this document here. The MMCD is a specification document that was created by mutual efforts of contractors, engineers, and local governments. The document's used throughout the province of BC, and its inclusion into our bylaw will provide developers with an immediate understanding and comfort that our specifications are consistent with standard practices around the province. Obviously, there are a few instances that will be specific to Summerland, which are identified within our bylaw, such as local road standards and hillside standards. So now I'll just walk through the similar presentation that we had at the Committee of the Whole, just at a little bit of a higher level here. So, I think I can read that. So just quickly, the process, we did a gap assessment on the existing bylaw several years ago and identified that that bylaw needed some significant changes. So that's what we've done here. It's not a rewrite of the bylaw, it's a brand new bylaw. We actually did 7 significant or lengthy working sessions with staff and the consultant to come up with sort of Summerland specific bylaw requirements. We prepared some updates, did a review, and then we presented this to the Development Process Improvement Advisory Committee in June. There were a few good comments from that, and we integrated those into the bylaw. We then took the document and provided it to the local development community for comment. We actually sent it out to quite a few different developers, consultants, and did receive a little bit of feedback, which was also incorporated into the document. And that's the updated one that you have in front of you today. So my eyes aren't very good. So just briefly, the purpose of the bylaw, it's the ability for local governments to require works and services as they relate to subdivision and development. whenever a developer comes in to do some work, there's some requirements for infrastructure they need to put in. When they install that, at the end of the day, it's turned over to the district for us to maintain for the rest of its useful life. So it's important that we have these standards set in place for developers when they're doing the work. This bylaw is applied to all subdivisions, including 2-lot subdivisions, and any structures that require a building permit. Some of the infrastructure that we're required the contractor to do work on are community water and wastewater systems, stormwater management, roadway, curb and gutter, sidewalk, street lighting, landscaping, and underground overhead. The bylaw also provides a matrix and maps that outline the appropriate standards for the different areas and road corridors of the district. So this is quite often just letting people know whether their road is rural or if it's an urban standard. So what's changed? The main change that we've seen with this document is the integration of this MMCD standard that most municipalities in the province use. We also have design criteria aligned with other references such as the Transportation Association, as well as our bylaws, the building bylaw, the driveway bylaw. So they're all speaking the same language. We did customize a few of the documents to meet the Summerland specific requirements that we have. I'll get to those in just a short period here. The front end still retains its flexibility, the exemptions component that reflect the community and what we've done. I'll speak to that a little bit further as well. We have added hillside guidelines in there to reflect our asset management principles. And one additional thing we've done on this one is we've allowed for alternative designs to be approved by the Director of Works and Infrastructure. So this isn't any changes that anybody wants to come in, they can just go to the director and have that happen. What it is it's instances such as stormwater where it's a bit of an art, and not every standard that's in the MMCD or in our document applies to every subdivision. So it allows us the opportunity to ensure that the performance objectives of what somebody is trying to do are met, but it might not be exactly out of this bylaw. These are minor, usually minor in nature, and usually they deal with stormwater. Okay, so we've updated the road cross sections for each service area. Obviously, these are Summerland specific. We've updated guidelines on on-site servicing. So this is drilling wells for potable water and for septic systems where they're unable to connect to the community systems we have in place. We've added trenchless technology, which is something that wasn't in our old bylaw, but is something that we are seeing more and more of in today's day. So the levels of service is a big one in this document, and this map, while it's small on the screen, it identifies the different levels of service by area. So we have urban, rural, hillside, industrial, downtown, and then some unique roads. And I'll give an example of those unique roads coming up here. But any developer that wants to look at doing some development can look at this and know right away what standards they're going to be held to when they go to do their subdivision. So for the road cross sections, I'm only showing a couple of the examples here, but we have cross sections for the hillsides, rural areas, urban areas, industrial, and then some specific ones for Prairie Valley Road and Lakeshore Drive. So this one on the screen right now is actually our hillside development standards. So this points out three different sort of sections that would apply. One for if there's development on both sides of the road, one for if there's development on one side of the road, and then another one for if there's no development on either side of the road for a certain area. So we just basically are trying to reduce the right-of-way as much as we can, just to limit the impact that this road would have due to the hillside topography. While these are hard to see on the screen, these are the examples of actual road-specific sections. So Prairie Valley Road and Lakeshore Drive are two unique Summerland-specific ones. So I've pulled those ones out. We do have all the other roads fit into something, but these ones are specific to those roads. So we've tried to identify them so that if a developer is looking to develop in those areas, they can clearly see the additional requirements or different requirements that there are for that road. The bylaw also speaks to some clarified roles. So the approving officer obviously has a great deal of responsibility within this bylaw, but there are some technical, more construction-related things that the Director of Works and Infrastructure will have a role in taking. As well, it defines the owner and the owner's consulting engineer, who are very key on these projects. There are some exemptions, and these exemptions are in the existing bylaw, so there is no change to these. And these are smaller items, such as a lot line adjustment or consolidation of lots, or creation of just a single residential parcel where new streets aren't required and the subdivision meets sort of some other criteria, being that there are no other roads in the area that have that specific, say, sidewalk or something like that in a close proximity, so within a couple 100 meters. So this hasn't changed from the old bylaw, it's still in there. That was a very brief overview of the new bylaw, but I know council, we did get into a very detailed discussion about it a while back, so I'm open for any questions.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Councillor Peak.
It's really not a question, but I want to say that the establishment of this has got to be a lot better for our staff and our public. I mean, when I was here, the second year I was on council, so I'm going back 7 years or something, or maybe 8, it was very obvious that none of this was integrated for our staff and the public to be able to understand. And the opportunity to have that there when you need to look at it has got to be a lot better than what we had before. Are the staff happy with the fact that the money has gone in to make this possible?
Through the mayor. Staff have been very excited about this project for many years, it sounds like, but now actually seeing it sort of in the final product, I think we're all, what I think we're most excited about is that a developer will come in and have a lot less questions and fully understand what they have to do to design or to put in a development in Summerland. So that's a real benefit to it, but staff were very involved in putting this together. It was a staff-heavy project. Thanks.
Okay, and no further questions. Could somebody bring the motion forward? Councillor Peak, that's the staff recommendation for first, second, and third reading. Second by Councillor Van Elfen. Any discussion? All in favor? None opposed? That carries. So we're running about an hour behind, but we'll keep plowing through here. Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program, Director of Development Services, please.
I don't have a presentation, but I'll just quickly overview my staff report. There's been a recent announcement of a new grant funding program called Rural Economic Diversification and Infrastructure Program. It's under the Ministry of Jobs, Economic Recovery and Innovation with the province of BC. And there's 3 funding streams that are proposed within the program: economic capacity, economic diversification, and forest impact transition. So that one is targeted more to forest communities that are impacted by the forestry sector. So of the 3 funding available categories, the District of Summerland is only eligible for the economic diversification stream, as it has a population over 2,500. And as well, it's a community that's not being impacted by changes in the forestry sector, so it wouldn't apply for that 3rd category. Under the economic diversification stream, there's 2 different categories within that stream. One is development, and one is implementation. So development funds studies or plans for future economic development of the community. It can include infrastructure design, architecture as well, costs, any consulting costs. While the implementation stream funds up to $1 million, and it could include, again, some infrastructure related to economic development, workforce development, business development, retention, and expansion within the community. For both those streams, there is a component to be provided by the local government. They fund 80% of those costs, so not up to 100%. And I do want to mention as well that in-kind contributions can make up 10% of the application. So in reviewing this funding opportunity, we looked at what potential projects we could apply to it, and we are recommending to council that we submit an application for the completion of a land acquisition and disposition study. Council has recently completed a strategic planning session and has determined that the completion of a district land acquisition and disposition study to be a top priority. And as well initiated or plan to initiate that in the third quarter of 2023. The idea behind this study is to more effectively manage our district land assets to encourage local economic development. And that could include the sale of land assets that are deemed surplus by the district and not required for core services, to identify those land assets that are of most value and could be used for a higher value economic use. And also any strategic land purchases that we may need in the future for expanding core services and infrastructure planning. We also see there's some potential community economic benefits from this study as well, for targeting potentially industrial lands for employment purposes, and maybe freeing some of our own municipal land for those purposes, as well as identifying future development sites for residential development in and around our community. So the intent of the grant funding would be to apply to a consulting budget for technical marketing and appraisal and evaluation advice from a commercial real estate consulting company. So I've given some examples there. And the idea would be that this technical expertise would help us in ensuring that we maximize value of our land assets that we're deeming surplus to Summerland taxpayers, while also finding the strategic land pieces that we want to retain for the future for future taxpayers. I'm happy to take any questions on this, and if council has, thanks.
Thank you. Any questions? Councillor Betts.
Thank you, through the mayor. Brad, I'm just wondering what other kinds of projects, like were there other top couple of projects that you guys considered, and what were they?
Yeah, through your worship to Councillor Betts, there are a couple that probably would fall under the economic development category that are also, we're trying to obviously tailor this program to council's priorities, given that we just recently went through a strategic session. One idea was the food hub, but we've currently got 2 other grant opportunities that are already applied for, one at the federal level, one at the provincial level, that we're hopeful that we're going to be successful for. So we didn't want to oversubscribe for that one project. So we looked at other potential opportunities, and this one did have an economic development bent to it. And so we think we could be successful with it.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Thank you. Councillor Peak.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. Through Brad, it talks about we take 10,000 from our economic development, which has 50,000. Does this have any impact on the Festival of Lights budget, or does that will that still be accommodated in 2023?
Your worship to Councillor Peak. Yeah, good question. The amounts that we have dedicated to Festival of Lights, I think around the $25,000 to $30,000 amount. 20,000. Thank you, David. There is some additional surplus within that budget for economic development projects that council chooses, and we've funded this fund for other economic development initiatives of the council in the past, like the tourism strategic plan last year that the Chamber of Commerce completed. So, no problem.
Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm very hopeful that we could, that this grant will come available to us. This is something very near and dear to my heart. I think there's land out there that's totally underutilized in the district, and I'm hoping then with the commercial appraiser, we can get some better ideas and possibly maybe a revenue stream and some economic activity in the community that'll benefit everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Would you like to bring the motion forward, please?
I'll bring the resolution 7.8 forward,
Okay.
Mr. Mayor.
Seconder. Councillor Betts, any further discussion? I'll call the question. All in favor? None opposed? That carries. 7.9, Development Services Activities Report. I'm just, Councillor Van Elfen.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just in the,
Yeah, I was going to.
with time, I just thought maybe this would be one we could table.
I was just wondering if we could maybe forego the presentation. If we've all read the report, we could ask any questions, and if not, just accept it for information and move on. Would that work?
I'll put the motion forward to accept the recommendations.
Okay, seconder. No questions for Brad? No? Okay, all in favor? That carries. Correspondence. Would anybody like to pull anything out of correspondence? No, then a motion to accept. Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Trainer, all in favor? That carries. Bylaws for adoption. Councillor Trainer.
I'm just going to recuse myself from 8.1 because there is discussion for final adoption regarding the deputy mayor, and because I have already been appointed to it, I'm going to remove myself.
Okay. Corporate officer.
Thank you, Mayor Holmes. So Council Procedure Amendment Bylaw number 2022-041 received its first 3 readings at the November 28th, 2022 regular council meeting. Notice was published in the December 1st and 8th edition of the Summerland Review, and no comments were received from the public. It is now ready for adoption. And secondly, should the council procedure bylaw be adopted by council, council can then consider the 2023 council meeting schedule that has been drafted in accordance with the amended procedure bylaw. And lastly, before council is the proposed deputy mayor protocol. The purpose of this protocol is to outline the role and responsibilities of the position and to provide guidance for the council member appointed to the position. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? If not, could somebody bring the 3 motions forward? Councillor Van Elfen, as presented, seconder. Councillor Barkwell, any discussion? Councillor Betts.
I would just like to acknowledge the feedback from the public about the reducing the council meetings to once every 3 weeks rather than from 2 weeks. I just want to say that I supported that motion with the intention of allowing staff more time to work more effectively and more efficiently on the tasks at hand in responding to customer service needs of our residents. That was my main reason that this to change the schedule because staff does prepare a lot of really detailed and excellent quality reports to council that provide guidance. I realize the shortcoming is that it could result in delays for certain development permits, but we did try to resolve some of those issues by having our development permits, certain development permits be allowed by the Development Department. So I would just like to reiterate those reasons for us going forward with this, and that I do still support that. And I really wish the Development Department in particular all the best in trying to really address the backlog as quickly as possible. Thank you.
Yeah, I always find the comments that we're meeting every 3 weeks means that we're doing less work kind of strange, because every organization I've ever worked with, all the work gets done between meetings, and meetings always seems to be means you're not working. I've never worked for a company where you could say your sales are way down, but hey, I've been having lots of meetings, and so I'm doing great work. So it's the number of meetings you have has no relation to the amount of work that the district's able to accomplish, and this is about being able to better accomplish the work that we do. And in terms of having delays for development things, it works both ways. Rezonings require 2 weeks public notice. And if you're meeting every 2 weeks, that means you don't have enough time to introduce a rezoning at one meeting and then have give public notice to have that public hearing at the next meeting. It has to wait to the meeting after that. So that's a 4-week delay. And this way it's only 3 weeks. So, there's cuts many different ways, and I'd say there's more benefits than there are negatives for everybody. Councillor Peak, you had something else to add?
A couple of my points you covered with your discussion. I do agree that this is an opportunity to see how well this kind of a change can make a difference in the production of what we are able to do, and the downloading to the Development Services Department for certain approvals to see how this works over the next year or so. So I think that's a good opportunity. I did have a question though, if I may, and I will probably go to the corporate service officer. So in the deputy mayor position at 10.1, it says at least once during each term of council must from among its members designate a councillor to serve as a member responsible for acting in the place of the mayor. In the original motion, we opted to review it in 2 years' time. Now, I realize this does not actually conflict with this, but in our inaugural meeting, there was the indication to review it at 2 years. Does that still work into this? Would you like to use your mic?
What document, or through the chair, what document are you referring to?
Oh, I'm looking at the bylaw to amend the council procedural bylaw, 2022-041.
Okay.
Page 505 of 512.
Yeah, so it says,
10 bracket 1.
yeah, sorry, I'm just looking at.
That's okay.
It says at least once during the term, yeah, so it would be at the beginning of the term, we would bring it forward, such as it was this year, but because council has that resolution that it is to be reviewed in 2 years, we will bring it back forward in 2 years.
Thank you. Thank you for the clarification.
Okay, anything further? Then I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? Councillor Van Elfen. Still stuck on something, aren't you? Councillor Patton. Sorry. Councillor Van Elfen's in favor. Let's correct the record there. Okay, and that carries. Mayor's report. Do you want me to defer that? I'll whip through this. Okay, so I'll start by noting the passing last week of lifelong Summerland resident Terry Green. Terry affected many people in Summerland in many different ways, both as a dedicated teacher and, Councillor Trainer, and as a strong advocate and contributor to the community. We send our condolences to his family. This month, Councillor Van Elfen and I have been immersed in meetings at the regional district, strategic planning, budget deliberations, and regular board meetings on December 1st, and again this Thursday coming. In strategic planning last week, the board, together with senior RDOS staff, threw a range of priorities on the wall, and in January, we'll revisit them all to see what sticks. Budget discussions have been ongoing with reviews of regional grant and aids, program changes, and capital projects. While the budget is still at the committee stage and has yet to come to the board for first reading, it's anticipated the district will be asked to requisition small increases to support the 911 emergency call center and mosquito control. As in previous years, after the budget receives first reading, the RDOS Manager of Finance will come to council as a delegation to present the budget to us. At the regular RDOS board meeting on December 1st, directors considered applications to the South Okanagan Environmental Conservation Fund and approved $282,215 in funding for 7 conservation projects. The fund was established in 2016 by the District of Summerland, the City of Penticton, Town of Oliver, and 6 RDOS rural areas. Each year, there's an open call for applications, and all submissions are reviewed by a technical advisory committee, which recommends projects for the RDOS board to consider. This year's funding includes support for one new project. That's $20,000 to the Okanagan-Similkameen Stewardship Society to work with local farmers and vineyard managers to deal with encroaching wildlife. The idea is to develop nature-based solutions to protect wildlife in agricultural areas, especially species at risk. The 6 other projects receiving funding are all continuations from last year, including about $100,000 to the Okanagan Nation Alliance and Penticton Indian Band for phase 2 of the Lower Trug Creek Renaturalization Project. This project aims to restore the natural form and function of the lower reach of Trug Creek, including restoring the floodplain, the riparian forest, and the creek's main stem structure to include riffle pools and spawning habitat. Phase 1 of the project was completed this past September with 80 meters of setback and channel widening and installation of the first riffle pool. Apparently, salmon have been seen spawning at this pool already. Phase 2 involves a further 350 meters of widening, the installation of 3 more riffles, and restoration of dryland habitat areas. The project is guided by traditional ecological knowledge and involves collaboration with all levels of government, including the District of Summerland. The project receives financial contributions from several sources, of which the Conservation Fund is just one. There are 2 other continuing projects receiving support from the Conservation Fund that are of particular interest to Summerland. The Okanagan-Similkameen Stewardship Society will receive $25,000 to continue to work with property owners in Garnet Valley to suppress yellow flag iris, which is an invasive species, and replace it with native seed mix, native trees and shrubs. And the Okanagan and Similkameen Invasive Species Society will receive $19,000 to develop local curriculum to teach school students about invasive species. And finally, as this is our last council meeting of the year, I would like to wish a very Merry Christmas to everyone in Summerland and beyond. And I look forward to returning to the opportunities and energy of a new year. Thank you. Sorry, CAO, your turn.
Yes, and now we've all been waiting for, riveting CAO report. I start my report tonight by acknowledging the recent passing of Scott Lee. For many years, Scott worked diligently in support of the district's utilities and was a friend and mentor to many during his time here. People that knew him described Scott as somebody who was always willing to help, and there was a need, and he was always excited to share his deep knowledge and understanding with others. It's said that he would often say, at the end of the day, when you're gone, people will remember you for the type of person you were and the connections you made, not what you did at work. This statement certainly rings true for Scott, who is remembered fondly by those whose lives he enriched for his service for the people of Summerland as well in the water utility. Eneas Creek has been experiencing some minor ice damming in its lower reaches, and as a result, the Centennial Trail along Peach Orchard Road has been temporarily closed. Some parts of the trail have become icy, and it is recommended that the public do not use the trail at this time. We have posted the trail with signs at the entrance to advise the public. Please also note that the Kiwanis Pier remains closed at this time while its structural integrity is reviewed. More updates on these items will come through Facebook as further information becomes available. The Winter 2023 Recreation Guide is now live at the www.summerland.ca website. If you look under Parks and Recreation, please note that as of December 6th, registration is open, and registering can be done online by visiting summerland.perfectmind.com. Finally, since it's the last regular council meeting of the year, I wanted to acknowledge the hard work of staff across the organization in 2022. It was another amazing year and much progress was made because of the fantastic team of staff we are blessed with across all departments. District offices will be closed on 2 p.m. on December 23rd for a much deserved holiday. Office staff will return in the new year on January 3rd. Snow removal and waste cart collection continue during the period, and the district's website should be consulted for specific hours relating to the arena, the aquatic center, and recreation center, as well as the sanitary landfill during the Christmas holiday period. And with that, I conclude my report.
Okay, thank you. And just a reminder, we need to go into closed after this, so if I could get a motion to extend the meeting. Councillor Van Alphen?
6 o'clock.
No, really?
5:30.
Okay. Well, if you want to, okay, seconder? Councillor Betts, all in favor? Carried. And now it's the public comment opportunity. I'll ask Mr. Crowder if you wanted to come up. And sir, so we don't have much time. If you could be succinct, please.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, first of all, just on a side, oh, do I get that?
Yep.
Okay, just on a side comment, take into consideration here, when you're talking about this 10% and everything like that, what if you did 75-25 and did the 25 120 days after the 75? Both payments would be lower than any payment on your old system. Anyway, that's a side comment. For those that don't know me, I went to school here, graduated here, taught OUC computer classes. I paid for university building highways here, so forth, like Coquihalla, Manning Park, Kelowna Airport, so forth. But anyway, what I was wanting to come here for is my business is computing and international logistics. And you have two projects I wanted to comment on. And this one I want to talk to you about is, you have a plan for an eco-village or that? And my company, myself, and another company out east represented Canada, and we built the ACE system with US Customs. And it's the largest trading platform in the world. And what I wanted to show you is some technologies and techniques that are currently shipping that might work better for your eco-village than you currently have. Right now, my understanding is that you want to build the eco-village and put it to private property. If you switched it where you kept the property and did it in a different system, you might be able to do like Tom Sawyer's Fence, get others to do the work, and we get to keep it, right? Right now, there's a lot of private companies want to put out money besides the federal government. Ivy Foundation is giving away $100 million in the next 3 years out of Ontario for green projects. And Trudeau these days seems like you talk to him nicely and whisper green in his ear, he can't get his wallet open fast enough, right? So what I would want to have you consider is changing your technologies a little. Right now, you're looking at solar cells, which is fine, which is great, and everything like that. But what I'm worried about is you're talking about a platform of solar cell panels. There's new companies now that are shipping that are doing coating technology, film technology. And basically what they do is they change your generation from the roof to the walls. That's a big change. You build your building any way you want, but it generates electricity the whole time, and it's hard to tell that it is a solar cell, right? And then what I would have you consider, instead of doing that, you have a shortage of labor and a shortage of rental. Right now, since 1970s, you have 1/5 the amount of money getting put into rentals that were put in 1970s. And if you consider it, get the others to back it, get a seed fund, I'm not gonna tell you what to do, I'm just throwing ideas at you, is then look at doing something where you have a bottom floor where you could have a commercial and go for one building and 6 tenants above it, enough to be self-supporting, enough to get the ball rolling. And you get to keep it, hand the building over to a real estate management at the end. You don't deal with the headaches, and then you'll have it a lot easier to get people to help finance you, right? The other project I wanted to talk to you about is you're doing, okay, I'll back up slightly. If you go with solar panels, 85% of solar panels right now are coming out of China. China is a dying country. It needs people to keep producing that product. even conservatively, in the next 30 years, they're going to lose 400 million people. Right as of today, they've already passed their highest population level. As of today, they are currently losing the population of Kelowna every day. They're not going to be there to support this. These other technologies are coming out of Europe, and now they're going to be starting to come land-based into Mexico. Mexico now has a lower labor rate than China. And companies have been talking about moving it and everything like that. And every month I talk to people all over the world, manufacturers, shippers, everyone. And that is what is coming. China will be moved away from. And if you go with panels, you're stuck with China, right? If you go with the other technologies, which are way more advanced, and they are the future, not 1960s technology, they are coming out of Europe. And the number, and if you want to go it a different way here, is don't expect too much from it. Germany has been putting money in the last 30 years into solar panel technology. They are the highest per capita exposure to solar cell technology in the world. And if you read the news, they ain't doing that good. And it took them 30 years to get to where they are now, right? If you go with the other ones like film technology, they are shipping. Like these
Mr.
things I'm
Kruger, I
telling
have
you
to
are-
ask you to
Sorry?
wrap up, please.
Oh, sorry. Anyway, I'll stop with that. But anyway, there's other ways to consider it than going with that technology and going for private sale. Now, on the road part, like I built a lot of highways and that, I was considering if you put a bylaw in that once you've built it, put your final cap down, no one is allowed to cut a service trench through it because it halves the life of the road. All these poor taxpayers are making an investment, and you're going to half the life of their investment if you allow it. If you allow it and they have to do it, then you make them pave, come in with profilers and pave a 100-foot section, or just the top coat, and that will give back the life of the road. Anyway, if that's, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, could I, so for the roads, if you could connect with Mr. Mitchell, who's right to your right, right? And for
Right.
the Eco Village, if you could connect to Mr. Dolovit, who's right on your left there, okay?
Yeah, sure, I got lots
Okay,
of stuff to tell you, but I'll
good.
keep it short.
And you can maybe just leave your contact details with our corporate officer, yeah? Just leave your contact deals with her, okay?
Sure.
And thank you.
Oh, I just wanted to say, I did this just because this is my hometown. I have no horse in this race.
No, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
appreciate
Thank
it. Yeah, thank you. Mr. Bessler.
Hi, Council. Brad Besler. I have a quick question regarding the proposed food hub at the end of Garnet Valley. First of all, we all know that Tony Boot was responsible for directing staff to select that location, and we all know her conflict of interest with her direct financial interest in that property. That project would be suited for an industrial zone. So my question is related to property tax. Is the district going to receive from the food hub a comparable property tax that they would from the same footprint in an industrial zone? Or is the food hub going to be classified farm status and the district's not going to get what it should out of that?
I can't answer that question, but I just want to clarify that no individual member of council directs staff to do anything. It's council as a whole that directs staff, okay?
But well, I mean, I've received emails, so I know Tony Boot was directly involved with meeting with staff related to that in January of this year before it was even brought to council.
Mr. Bressler, staff do not receive direction from any one of us. Staff receives direction from all of us through motions. That's what they act on. Anyway, that's besides the point. In terms of taxation, I'm not sure how that works. I don't know if. Thanks.
So I'll try to answer your question through the mayor. In terms of property taxation, so BC Assessment would be the ones that are classifying that property. So they would determine whether or not it's a class 6 business or a class 5 light industrial property, class 1 residential or a class 9 farm. So they would be the ones that would go through the process of looking at it, making those determinations, and then as the district, we would take that assessment, incorporate our tax rates and tax accordingly.
So if it does maintain farm status, then that's going to cost the district in terms of upgrades significantly. but it's going to really benefit one property owner. So I think we need to look into the tax cost to Summerland before we push through. If we don't even know that and we're going to push through a project to the very end of Garnet Valley when there's opposition within the community and we know it was started by Tony Boot, you might not agree, but I have documents that prove it. So these are things that are important. This is a multi-million-dollar project way at the very end of town. And if we don't even know if we're getting the proper commercial taxes that we should be for a commercial project, then I think council's putting the cart before the horse.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Nobody online, I presume, corporate officer? Okay, so if I could have a resolution to close the meeting to the public for Councillor Van Elfen, Councillor Patton, all in favor? That carries, thanks. We'll just take a 2-minute